Hello, guys. It is wonderful to see you today. Today, we are going to talk about federalism, which is an important part of the Constitution and why specifically it was set up. Specifically today, we're going to go through the first few texts in our lesson, Federalism Powers Divided. Specifically, the text the founders chose federalism and what is federalism. And we are doing this so that we can explore our objective for today. And our objective is define federalism, explain why the framers adopted a federal system and instead of a unitary system. So, for the objective of today, we're going to explore federalism and why the framers of the Constitution chose that as our government model. So, starting off with our first text, the founders chose federalism. We start off with a couple of examples of federal powers. Now, to be clear here, like we will talk about in a little bit, federalism can be defined as the government system in which there is a national government, a central government um, that works concurrently with a series of smaller governments that we would call the state government for our purposes. Now, the important part of federalism is that we're going to have these powers divided, and we see a couple of examples here. First things first. So, we see that the federal laws, um, that means universal amongst all the states in America. We see that federal law requires young men to register for military service at the age of 18. It's not a state law in Missouri that decides that, it's the federal government. Likewise, it's the federal government, the federal law, that sets a minimum wage. Um, However, states can establish their own minimum wage levels, and that they can decide on how much money that uh, could go in if they go above the federal law and what they set as minimum wage. Now, finally, we're going to see that it's federal law that prohibits discrimination in hiring based on race or ethnicity, and as well as any other aspects like gender. That would prohibit discrimination. That is a federal law thing, not a state law thing. And on the other side, we are going to see examples of state powers and state law. Now, it's state law that requires individuals to have a driver's license that drive a car. The federal government doesn't decide who's allowed to have what the driver's license program would look like. It's actually the states. Likewise, it is illegal under the state law for anyone to drink under the age of 21, or yes, illegal to purchase alcohol beverage to be more specific. And likewise, the state law allows only individuals who meet certain requirements to buy or own firearms. The federal government doesn't regulate firearms, it is the states that have that specific power. So, if need to, I could leave this up here for a moment for students to get uh, to get this dialed down real quickly. Pause detail if that's the case. Okay, so assuming that we are ready to move on, let's go. And now we're going to talk more specifically about the division of powers. Now, the division of government and powers is between the national government and the 50 states, of course. And it is this specific division that reflects the need for a balance between the central powers as well as those of the individual states. Now, this arrangement is sometimes complicated because of how federal law and the state law intertwine themselves within one another. That being said, this is an important part of governments, and this is actually a system that was intended by our founding fathers. That was in mind for the founding fathers on how our countries work in order to limit it. So, Let's talk about some of the factors that led our framers to try to make this um, uh, to help create this specific type of government. So, in 1787, it's the framers of the Constitution had aimed to create a central government that's strong enough to meet the needs of the day while preserving existing states. Now, important context here is that all of the framers, they are ultimately pro local government. They really wanted the local government to have more power to help fit the needs there. However, they slowly start to realize that hey, there needs to be a type of national government that's strong enough to meet demands for all of the states. Like this attitude is inspired partly from the American Revolution. After all, it was fought in the name of freedom, from British control, from the control of King George III, and like in this revolution, and by fighting in the name of freedom, is what fueled the desire for a balance between the local and central government. Now, okay, so because of the issues that they saw with the king and queen, they saw that few framers wanted to support a strong central government that was modeled after the British. So few framers, few of the people that created the Constitution wanted a strong central government that could have the power to uh, the, to really enforce their powers. They were skeptical of a strong central government. Now, when they originally created the Articles of Confederation, they were wanting a lot of power to the states, but like we talked about many times, the Articles of Confederation proved to be too weak to address the problems of the nation. It proved that there was like a lot of issues going on with it, and therefore it needed like a lot of fixing up to do. So with that in mind, that like we talked about before, the framers were at an impasse. They believed that the framers believed that the government power poses a threat to individual liberty, but at the exact same time, we're going to see that the framers at the same be it, saw that having too much power, giving too much power to the states, is just not really the best idea. So, um, to prevent the abuse of power, um, they realized that the government power must be restrained and divided as federalism allows. You see, because there has to be certain powers be given to the national government, there are problems with the state government. We are going to see that they are facing that each part of the government is intentionally limited. Um, that they have serious issues having a full grasp of power if the powers are divided in this specific way. Um, in the framers of the Constitution's mind, they believe that if we are able to have powers to the state government, they can have address local problems when needed. But at the same time, um, by having a national government, they're able to address problems that will affect all 50 states, whether it's from foreign competition, resolving issues between the states themselves, having a united law. All of these will prove to be strong defenses in favor of individual liberty. So, with that in mind, those are key convictions of the framers. So, again, to stress these points, the framers of the Constitution they feel that the government power threatens individual liberty. They thought that the government power must be restrained in order to prevent individual to prevent destruction of individual liberty. And likewise, dividing government power helps prevent its abuse. Um, by separating powers from the national government and the local government, we are going to see a lot of defenses in favor of liberty there. So, uh, okay, so with that in mind, we are going to have a brief pop up debate. So, I want you guys to think. We talked about the national government and the state government on how powers are divided between the two of them. So, this leads me to ask you, what do you think should have more legitimacy, like more power? The states or the national government? Now, if you recall, we have done this in class before, and how it will work would be like this. Just be a grade based on participation and behavior, and to decide the notes in a single sentence, I want you to write what you think about the question, right? Um, that so I want you to talk about just briefly talk about. Doesn't have to be like super detailed or anything like that. I just want you to say something along the lines of, "I believe that the state has more legitimacy because this reason," or "I believe the national government should have more legitimacy because of this reason." Anyway, how you feel, it's great. I'm just curious to see you guys' point of view. Now, whoever's speaking will stand up to speak, and the first person to speak, quote unquote, has the floor. Now, you can still stand with the person speaking, but any student who stands would have to wait for patiently for the other person to finish speaking. Now, I am expecting all students to speak out, since, after all, like I said before, this is part of a grade. And now, but likewise, responding to others' thoughts should be positive to nature. In other words, you can respond to others' thoughts whenever you have the floor. However, whatever the case is, it has to be positive nature. We're not dragging each other down. We're going to be respectful to one another. Um, and again, this has to be expecting everybody to take part in it. If students who haven't stood up, I will call them to openly to do so. And if they refuse, they just won't get the grade for it. Not going to argue with you. I'm just going to acknowledge that you're not going to get the grade for it. And continue on with the next person and next activity. Okay? So if you need a so let's pause the video here. Mr. Beard needs to. He will go over the instructions again, and perhaps a little bit more detail if needed. But I'll give you time to pause. Okay, see you in a moment. All right, welcome back. I hope the pop up debate went very well. So, moving on to text two. What is federalism? We talked about why the framers wanted federalism and some today example of what federalism could look like with the laws we talked about in the beginning. But let's talk about what exactly is federalism. So, with that in mind, the way we're defining federalism is that federalism is a system of government where a written constitution divides power between a central government and regional governments, such as states or provinces. Now, each level of government has its own substantial set of powers and cannot change the division of powers acting alone. So so each state has their own. So each level has their own set of powers. National government can do this, so the state government can do that, but they can't share those powers without acting alone. Now, um, because they while they do well, let me be clear, they do have some shared powers, like we'll talk about within the next lesson. However, right now it's important to note that there is a division of powers that the national government, my hand here, and my state government, my hand, has very separate powers. With that in, and because of this, the division of powers often requires collaboration between the national government and uh, and the local government, and between the national and local leaders. So you often see photos of, for example, uh, uh, Barack Obama talking with the Texas governor, or Joe Biden talking to perhaps the Missouri governor, uh, uh, like different videos of presidents talking with state governors in order uh, to help get to the bottom of certain problems. Now, uh, let's talk about this division of powers. Now, our system of government specifically provides for a division of powers between the national government and the 50 states. Now, this division of powers is very specifically implied in our original Constitution, not directly stated, but it is implied through the way that it is written that hey, for our government system to work, there will be powers given to the national government that is above state, but at the same time, states will have specific powers to them. And this is given out very explicitly, very direct within the 10th Amendment that any power that is not directly given to the national government is automatically given to the state government. That's literally what the 10th Amendment is all about. Now, because of this, federalism creates a dual system of government where we have two levels operating over the same people and territory at the same time. That is rather considered to be unique in government. Very typically, there is one leader controlling only controlling the same people in the same territory. However, because of the way federalism works with the national government and the state government, there are, we have two government systems at the same time that have with their own unique laws. And while the federal laws go the same wherever you go in the United States, they are oftentimes different from state to state. The laws in Missouri will not be the same laws in Arkansas, Iowa, New York, California. So, but they are the same no matter what with the national government. It's just important to note that each dual system of government, wherever you go, could be slightly different depending on the state you are, but there's always two systems of government at the same time. So, because of this government system, a distinctive strength of federalism lies in the fact that it allows local action for local concerns and national action for wider concerns. Again, we have federalism has the distinct ability to address any concerns that are for people in Missouri, while at the same time, or in any other state, while at the same time address wider concerns for the nation because we're operating on two different scales. This is how the government can focus on so many things at once. Because we have different state governments running their own state, um, uh, you see one group of people acting there, while our national government acting for everybody, they're acting everywhere. So we are seeing differences along the lines with that. Now, likewise, because I give an example of having local action for local concerns. There are some areas that are more affected by certain weather, certain types of disasters that we can see with geographic differences. So, that could influence state policies. That, like for example, we could see that some states will have different earthquake resistant building codes or flood related laws. So, for example, the flood related laws in Missouri are going to be very, very different in states like Florida or Alabama, which are coastal states that they reside on the coast and more susceptible for tsunamis or hurricanes. So we could see get examples of state laws, how they can influence different laws there, and likewise, examples of unique state laws include New Jersey and Oregon prohibiting drivers from pumping their own gas. We see Another example would be North Dakota not requiring voters to register. They don't have to register to vote over there. Nebraska has a unicameral legislature. This is interesting because, as you may recall from our discussions previously, our nation was founded on the thought that we should have a bicameral legislature, meaning that two houses, to help make laws, whereas Nebraska only has one. Um, Meanwhile, Oregon and Washington, very controversially, have legalized physician-assisted suicide, where they can get a doctor to subscribe to a system and committing suicide legally. Um, Meanwhile, um, uh, uh, we have 5 states, including Alaska and Delaware, that do not impose a general sales tax. So the way that they do tax in those specific states are different. So, meanwhile, uh, um, we in this section, laboratories of government, we're going to see that because of the unique structure, this dual structure of federalism that we have with the two government acting at once, federalism allows for experimentation and innovation in solving public policies problems, which is uh, which is really expounded on the fact that each state has their own local problems, hence giving rise for experimentation and innovation. So, for example, we can see how in the Welfare Reform Act of 1996 illustrates how ideas from states like Wisconsin, California, and Michigan um, influence national policy. These states help create have wealth, unique welfare laws, which help influence how our nation would create their welfare programs. Now, this law specifically replaced the Aid Families with Dependent Children, or the AFDC program, with block grants to the states, which gives them discretion over eligibility for financial assistance. So these states help. Well, what they did was that they help, but made programs and grants to help decide who is more eligible for financial assistance, and that seems to be something that our nation really took heart to, and that we have ultimately implemented within much of into our programs nationally. So, um, moving on, federalism provides strength through union. We have two governments working together. They can work together to help solve serious issues. And they can aid in national defense, foreign affairs, and responses to natural disasters. Now, I talked about before how Florida and Alabama they have unique flood laws due to um, uh, due to issues like hurricanes and tsunamis or anything else like that. It's important to stress that the system is not perfect. They can have strength through union, but weakness could be that like when things are not organized, they are really not organized, which causes a lot of problems. Which is what we can see in the handling of Hurricane Katrina in 2004, and was a lot of communication issues between the national and state government led to a lot of problems for the affected victims of Hurricane Katrina, which unfortunately led to a lot of deaths and mismanagement due to the lack of aid for the people suffering from the difficulties of the hurricane. So so we got through much of today's lesson just as a really brief recap of everything we talked about today. So, and I know this is not on the notes, but just to help something to help reflect on. Um, so, federalism, again, is a system of government in which a written constitution divides the power of government on a territorial basis between a central government and regional governments called states. If we're being technical, that would be the definition of federalism, which we talked about. Now, likewise, we talked about the division of powers in detail. We talked about how both national governments and state governments have unique powers that are not shared with each other. And finally, we talked about why federalism. We talked about how the original founders wanted federalism, despite favoring local governments due to the nature of federalism and limiting government power. So we saw, well, we have a definition here. We talk about what it does, and we talk about why. Okay, so that is the recap. Now, here is our assignment for today. Note, this is open for modification by Mr. Beard. So, all you do is when you get out the IRN, which is what we'll be calling the interactive reading notepad, different from the fill in the blank notes, um, uh, I want you to enter questions 1 through 4 on it. Now, um, 1 through 3 should be entered in a race format, while we will do question 1 as a class together. There's something that I want to do together, so we can enter that together, uh, so that we can have a strong understanding for that. Now, um, however, while we do number 1 as a class, question 2 through 4 should be done independently. Do note if you weren't here on the day this was assigned, we didn't do as a class. I want you to do question 1 independently as well, okay? Or you're gonna ask a classmate about how they reached the answer to question 1 in a class, okay? All right, so that is all for today. I have a couple of students ask me if they could see my cat. He is not going to be happy, but this is Leche. He's kind of a big cat, as you can see. He doesn't like me when I'm holding him up. You can see him trying to get away right now. As you can see, he's kind of a big cat. He's kind of chunky and just likes to eat a lot. Isn't that right, buddy? Okay. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? All right. Well, me and Leslie just wanted to tell you guys goodbye. And I hope you guys have a great day. Okay. Hold on. Let me exit this real quick. Okay. You have a great day. Goodbye.